Great. Yeah, so Notre Dame is obviously snubbed.
Right.
Like, they're the snub.
Yes.
BYU is a snub as well.
I tend to agree with that by the way they treated Bama and then BYU. It's not the same.
And the fact that BYU was always behind some of these teams, right?
Sure.
Like, they were 11-1 and out.
Yeah. I mean, Kalani Sitake had a great quote where, he's basically making the argument that Texas Tech is the best team in the country, and they played them twice, and it's the only team they lost to, and nobody else has played the best team in the country twice, which I think is compelling, where it's like they really felt the penalty of losing to that team twice, where you look at some of the other resumes that have made it in here, it's not like they played a murderer's row. I know the Big 12 is not a very great conference at the top end, but some of the teams that will be competing for a championship, their schedules weren't exactly the most difficult either.
And sometimes, again, with committees, like we've seen this with basketball and stuff, if you lose to the same opponent, it's like, well, maybe that's just a bad matchup for you. Like, it's not quite like as damaging.
Right.
But they didn't get any of that. They didn't get any of that grace. And Kalani Sitake also had another great point where they weren't even included in the comparisons when you're looking at all of these side-by-side bubble teams.
Can we talk about it real quick?
Well, I just want to say, so Kalani's point was at least include us on the graphic.
The way that the bubble was treated on game broadcasts this weekend, I think was egregious. The lack of BYU inclusion in some of the comparisons, I think, is insane.
It would literally go number 9, number 10, number 12.
And then in parens, BYU is 11, which is insane. And then the other part about it, too, was, and it ended up happening, but everybody saying, without a shadow of a doubt, that nothing would happen to Alabama, even if they got blown out. I feel like that was the wrong way to talk about a team that was squarely on the bubble. And that's, again, another part of the issue, and you and I tend to agree with this, but it feels like the playoff should be in the hands of more networks, because ultimately it feels to us when we watch games sometimes that the entity that does the game that also does the postseason is protecting the interests of both of the things.
Well, and even the 15 minutes before we got the bracket was a defense of Alabama.
Was crazy. It was actually crazy to watch. That first 15 minutes I could have done without.
And I think, too, this stuff becomes very hard to then move forward with, where you are protecting Alabama in a way that, again, BYU did not get that protection. And so then our conference championship games saved?
I don't think.
Because, like, the idea was, okay, if they dropped a team out, no one would ever want to play in this game again, because they were in the bracket and then they fell out. But if you're telling me it doesn't matter at all anyway, that you could lose like that in that game and it doesn't change anything?
Well, it doesn't matter for some of them.
For some of them.
That's, I think, the really...
I think you still have a conference championship problem.
Like, we do. It's still a big problem.
It's unnecessary in this model.
They should go to the conference championship play-in weekend.
Play-in weekend. I agree, because I think a play-in weekend, you've got opportunity. Like, Miami could have been playing somebody. Notre Dame could have been playing somebody. Like, bracket busters existed in college basketball for a long time. And you don't have to, like, do a ton of legwork ahead of time. Mm-hmm. You just go, like, hey, by this date, are you willing to do it?
Right.
You could play these games and sell that. And give people opportunities. But again, there has to be consequences for losing those games.
I think, yes. There's never another spot in the sport where you lose a game and nothing happens to you.
Right.
I'm very frustrated today. I love this sport to death, but they make me angry irrationally because of the things that they do to me.
There is a quote from Pete Bavacqua, the Notre Dame athletic director. He tells Yahoo Sports that they're shocked about their snub, calls the weekly rankings process an absolute joke, and one that gave Notre Dame fans false hope. We feel like the playoff was stolen from our student athletes. That's why you can't do the weekly show after this.
No, I think they got to be done with it.
I think they absolutely have to. I do want to talk about the actual bracket. There was just so much with the snubs and the decisions that the committee made. I wonder, if you're Notre Dame and you're stepping out of this, you've played like one of the best teams in the country, by the way. All the advanced metrics back that up. They really like Notre Dame. How do you turn the page?
I don't know.
Because I think you're going to be mad for a long time. Like, this is a great offense. Yeah. Jeremiah Love going to be a Heisman finalist. We don't get to see him in the playoff. This is also a team, and I think it's worth pointing out, because you were talking about, like, the system, that people are trying to squeeze them, make them join a conference. I've always said the three things for Notre Dame that they don't need to join a conference are the ability to fill out a schedule the way that they want, playoff access, and enough money to compete. Playoff access got affected here.
I think the scheduling thing is going to start to become a little bit more affected down the line, too. I think teams are less willing to schedule Notre Dame. And again, this was probably a portion of it with putting Miami over them at the very end, is if you're Miami and you beat Notre Dame and you get none of the credit for it, why the hell would you ever schedule Notre Dame again?
Right. Actually, so I think that's an important one because there will also be off-season conversations about the value of these types of games.
Yes.
Texas and Steve Sarkisian have been making that point.
And it's a great point that Texas is making,
Yeah, that they didn't get credit for going out and playing
Only
Texas.
Indiana played Ohio State better all year.
And they got treated like a 3-loss team.
Yep.
We weighed down on them. I mean, also they lost to Florida, but still, like they
I know, but
not...
Alabama lost to Florida State, who got beat by Florida, right?
Yeah.
Like, we got to have that conversation at some point.
Yeah, it didn't matter. Worst loss out of everyone, and 3 total losses with the extra conference championship game. It didn't end up mattering. But I think for Notre Dame, as you talk about, like, okay, they're feeling a squeeze or they're feeling a type of way about this. They made a lot of money last year by reaching the national championship game, and they got to keep it all. And there was like this whole idea that independence is working really, really well for them, because it was. This, I do think, is, there's probably a lot of administrators in other conferences that are happy to see this. I think they felt like the system was really set up well for Notre Dame and not everyone else.
I know a lot of fans feel that sentiment. I'm sure it's echoed in the conference offices. And by the way, you mentioned it. I think both you and I do agree that Notre Dame is in a good spot, right?
Yeah.
Like the system isn't necessarily set up for them, but it's certainly not set up to be a detriment to them.
No.
But once
not
again,
with this many at-large spots.
Exactly. But once again, if you feel like you're just going to get snubbed at the end on the playoff, that hurts. And then I am curious with the schedule, and we've talked about Notre Dame USC, for example, the idea that there were a lot of people who were basically out here saying, well, beating Notre Dame didn't do a lot for us, but it might hurt us, at the end of the day. Like, it's an interesting thing.
What's another thing that annoys me about this? We spent like 2 weeks where the committee was like obsessed with losses.
Yeah, they were.
And good losses. Yeah. And they were like, well, Notre Dame has great losses, 2 by a combined 4 points, 2 of the best teams. And then they were like, hey, Alabama's lost to Florida State. Hey, that was really bad, right? And they couldn't run the ball. And that's showing up again down the stretch. And then they beat Auburn, and that part went away entirely.
Which, by the way, Auburn must have been like the greatest, 5-7 team in the history of college football.
Really impacted the way that this committee moved people.
Yeah.
So that's the thing where it's like, again, abolish the weekly rankings because that didn't do anything. We spent weeks talking about the quality of losses and how obsessed they were with them, and those did not factor in. We were saying Notre Dame was getting more credit for Miami being a good loss than Miami was getting credit for it as a win.
Yep.
That was what was happening for a couple weeks.
Outrageous. The weekly rankings I'm completely done with, but I feel like that still doesn't solve my issues with them. Because now they're just moving in the shadows completely.
Yeah.
And at least we have the opportunity to come out here and just be mad online. And it's the biggest thing that the weekly rankings have done is give people content, right? Like, we can at least be mad online because we see what they're doing in advance, and now they can just do anything, and we can't be as mad online.
Unless they change the process and there's more transparency in things given out, or they are factoring in a computer rankings, a composite or something. I mean, I don't know. I think they got to, start from scratch on this. They're starting. It's a new contract. It's a new world.
They should blow
2026. I would blow it up too. I mean, we always end up talking about why there's all these athletic directors on this committee. They already have a pretty busy day job. There's just a lot that happens, and you always end up at the same point. This year, in the year that Florida State got left out in the 4-team field as an undefeated Power 4 champion, you come out and you're just like, well, they just picked who they wanted to.
Yeah.
And then they retroactively came up with reasons to justify it.
Which they do on a week-to-week basis.
I know, and that's a really tough place for the sport to be in.
It is. That's the thing I keep saying.
Because we're going to have to take this seriously next year.
Yes, and it's a problem. We are fans. We care about this. I've been in those locker rooms. You covered them forever, right? This is a big deal. And the fact that we feel like we can't even fully buy into this process because it's so shady, that's not good for anybody.
I know. And that's where I'm I don't know exactly how you move on from this, because I hate that the last month of the season gets overshadowed by all of these arguments and complaints, and you have to pick a side on the Miami-Notre Dame debate.
It was supposed to make the game shine more, which, to their credit, we've had more intrigue in games late in the year. but it's also we can piss and moan at the end of the year about what's going on in how the committee's viewing all the different stuff. And like, I don't think I love that. I just watch the games regardless.
I got to read you a really funny tweet from Brian Curtis at The Ringer. The committee is going to pick the wrong team, so let's let them pick even more next time. Definitely the funniest solution.
Okay, so
but isn't that the idea? It was 16. All those people saying, oh, if we went to 16, that's more spots that are at large spots.
I'm a contractionist.
I know
Anti-expansion.
Anti.
Put it to 8. Take it back to 4. Let's go to the old BCS. Just 2 teams. Let's put Ohio State and Indiana facing off once again for a national title. Like,
if it was 4. Actually, pretty good 4. It would have been Indiana, Ohio State.
That would be a fun 4.
Georgia and Texas Tech.
And all red, by the way.
All red, but I think people would have been like, yeah, those feel like the 4 best teams.